something caught my eye. About 75 to 100 yards away, I see this tree. It's a smaller tree, but I see this tree shaking, violently shaking. So I'm sitting there, and I don't see a squirrel. I don't see a deer. I don't see anything, but I see this tree, just this lone tree shaking. You know what, I'm going to tell you, I had my phone with me, and I'm like, you know what, I should have recorded that. But you don't think about that. So I finally got the phone up, and then I started talking to whatever was out there. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not going to harm you, and I'm doing that whole de-escalation. Well, then it stopped because it was dead quiet out there. And there's migratory birds, there's animals, there's all sorts of stuff that should be in those woods. It was silent. You could have heard a pin drop.
I'm joined by a guy with a great name, Matt Arner. Matt is a researcher out of Pennsylvania and one of the co-hosts of Sasquatch Experience. Matt, you just recently got back from a conference. How is the conference this weekend?
You know what? I'm going to tell you, I really had a great time. And Gwen, she's a good friend of ours. She did an outstanding job of putting this together. Last year, there was a couple hiccups, and it was not her fault at all. This year, everything was ironed out, and wow, it was just a huge, huge event. And we had a great time. We, it was a nice mix of speakers, and a lot of us are local or regional. And the crowds that we had coming in to listen to us, we were surprised at how many people were truly interested in hearing about the Bigfoot experience or hearing about experiences locally in Pennsylvania and such. It was a great event. We got a lot of new encounters that we documented. So we'll be following up with the witnesses, in the next couple of weeks. And found we actually had a little spot there that I said, this has the potential to be a hot spot. And I probably shouldn't have said that because I had two separate people coming up telling me about incidents that they had in that particular area. So, so I think at that point I'm going to say, okay, this looks pretty promising to do some research.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fantastic time. It was myself, Sean, James Baker, for the Sasquatch Experience. We had Jamie and Jenny King at our table, and they were speakers as well. And then we had other right across from us was Michael Cook and Les Odell. They were fantastic, and then they had one or two other people that were local, and had some pretty interesting encounters. So it was great, like I said, to sit there and have everyone in that place, and where they have the festival at. It's a great location. There was plenty of parking. Like I said, the vendors were, I think they had 95 vendors, 8 food trucks. Everything was top notch this year.
What's your background? How did you stumble into all this? What were you doing before you started hunting for Bigfoot?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. So I've always had an interest in Bigfoot. And I remember I grew up in a military family, and we were my mom took me to the movies at the over at the Navy base, and I don't know what I had to be like 7 or 8 years old, and it was The Legend of Boggy Creek, and I thought that was the greatest movie of all time. So when I was younger, like I used to always get, like when I go to the library at the school, they hit that one section. Now, most of my friends would go, and I was the same way too. We'd all get the sports books and everything, but there was that one section where you had to reserve the books, and they were all like, the classic books on Frankenstein or the werewolf, and then they had books on Bigfoot. And I can't recall the book. And I'm gonna look. I gotta look it up. I might have to talk to like a Henry May about this. There was a book that I know. There was a book that like it had to be. It wasn't the cover of the book itself, but like one of the first pages was, and now I can recall what it was. It was a picture of Renee DeHindren standing next to this wooden Sasquatch statue.
Yeah. The wooden carving.
Yes, and I can't recall. And like I said, I know that it's been in a few books, but I'll get with like a Henry or a Daniel Perez to try to track down which book that might have been. But this was published in the 70s, and I remember like just reading that book inside and out, and and of course. All I wanted to do was go out to the Pacific Northwest, because at the time, that's where I thought that Sasquatches would be. And I was primarily here on the East Coast. So then in the 1980s, I was a little older. I had just gone into junior high school. When I went into junior high school, my mom, who's a stay-at-home mom, she decided to take a job because at this point, I was a little more self-sufficient. So she was working at an industrial park, and it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which isn't a big Bigfoot area at all. But she had been called to work at night, and they were doing a major promotion later that week, so they wanted everyone in. She drove out there, and again, this is before cell phones. She came home, and she's white as a ghost. And she tells my dad, I just saw a monster. So, of course, my ears picked up, And what she said was there was she described it as like a shaggy, hippie, heavy metal type thing with the long, greasy hair, all hairy, and she said it came out of the woods. It was a road that had woods to the one side. On the other side was a farm, but at the farm there was also a pond there with all the cattails. And she said what happened was it walked out in front of her car, took about 3 steps to cross the road, which was your normal size back road, and she said it went right into the cattails. Well, she pulled into the farmer's driveway, and she was absolutely shocked what she saw. And then nobody was there, so she ended up driving home and saying, "Oh my God, oh my God." So, unfortunately for me, I wanted to go out with my dad,
right?
But he was like, "No, you got to stay here." So he ended up driving out to the spot, and it's funny because. My mom's 87 years old now, and anytime we go anywhere near that, where that industrial park was, she calls it Monster Road.
Oh, wow.
Because of what she saw. Now, it's kind of, and again, what I know now versus what I didn't know back then. Could it have been a Bigfoot? Could have been the way she described it. She described it very much like a Bigfoot. She said it was bigger. She said it walked out. It only took a few steps to cross that road. And it wasn't even like it was running. It was just walking. She said it had that long, greasy, matted hair. And she said it went right into the where the cattail swamp area was by the pond. So now looking back on it, we're very close to Bucks County was very close to New Jersey, which is also home to the New Jersey Pinelands. And this was probably in a drive less than 40 minutes from where the start of the Pinelands forest would be. So it's possible that this was, obviously, Bigfoot doesn't know boundaries, like state boundaries or park boundaries. So it's possible that this might have been a creature that, was kind of exploring the area or spreading out. Whether there's a migration, I don't know. We still don't know that. But anyways, as time went on, I kind of lost interest when I got a little older, and I'll admit that. When I was a teenager, it was all about playing football and, hockey and, and then girls and then, going to college and everything. But then I always had that interest. And then back in the late 90s, I was going on, that was back in the old days of the internet. I was going on different forums, and I remember the BFRO page. I'd always look up to see what was happening in Pennsylvania. And I remember there was also the PBS, I think it was the PBS page, or it may have been one of Stan Gordon's pages. And I would look at them and I say, okay, you know what, there are reports here in Pennsylvania. And I was reading about reports. Most of them were in the southwestern part of the state, Chestnut Ridge area. But there was a few that were from our area. Then I started getting more interest, and I was always reading up about it. I got involved with a paranormal group just from a funny thing with my work. I work as a police officer. So the whole paranormal thing, we had knowledge of one of the town's buildings that was owned by the town itself that was haunted. And I had friends of mine that were paranormal investigators, so I got them in to do a fundraiser for the town to do ghost hunts. So I ended up becoming friends with them, and they knew I had an interest in Bigfoot, so I was the Bigfoot guy. And whenever stuff would come in, where somebody would see something or hear something or get footprints, they would always call me. And so at the time, I had no idea what I was doing, but I just did everything, I acted almost like it was anything I would handle with my job. Yeah. I tried to find the witnesses. I would try to, get a statement, from them, a verbal statement. If they want to send me an email or something in writing, that was even better. There was a few times that we had people that would, for whatever reason, they would say, "Hey, I saw something," but then when you got to questioning them, you could kind of tell that there were some issues in their statement, and a lot of those witnesses, I couldn't validate, what they saw. But I've had other witnesses, and again, it's from my training and my experience as a police officer that I saw people that gave me stone cold statements, and they have that physiological senses that kind of come through when they're giving the statement. When you see somebody that the hair standing up, yeah. when because they were so scared, that's a big indicator that something did scare them. And so there was a lot of this time that I was building up these encounters, from talking to witnesses. And then back in, I believe it was 2013, I ended up going to one of the PBS events. They were doing a camp out in Clearfield County. So This is a great story. I mean, I go up there. It's Eric Altman, Stan Gordon, all these famous, Bigfoot people from Pennsylvania.
The legends.
The legends. I know no one there because I'm coming from the Poconos area, Pennsylvania. I don't know, I've talked to these guys on the phone or through email, but they all know each other. And I see this ragtag group of individuals coming up. And there's one little guy. Well, actually, there was two little guys on there. There was a guy with glasses, another guy with a crew cut that were smaller, this gigantic guy, and another guy with red hair. And they come up, and the leader comes up to me and says, "Hi, my name's Sean. Come hang out with us." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And you know what? That has, from that day forward, we've had a great relationship, a really great friendship. And I've learned a lot from him. But we had, even that weekend, we had an experience that was fairly interesting. So we had gone out to the spot where Sean had his encounter, I believe it was a year or two before, where they had something running around the camp, and then when they were in the tent, they had the hand that came and touched the tent.
Yeah.
And Sean had been very nervous about going back. And so it was basically the same group plus myself, and we decided to go out there. And at the end of the night, we're getting ready to wrap everything up. We're putting the fire out, and man, we heard a vocalization from, probably no further than like 100 yards away. And, I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, and Sean was a little nervous, but he held his ground. And like I said, it showed a lot about his attributes. He was, he had mentioned about how, afraid he was from that last experience, but the fact that he stuck it out, even with us getting a vocalization and the way he handled himself was, showed, he had a lot of courage, and he had a lot of, inner strength to stay out there. So that in itself was, it was pretty much like a big, green flag that this guy here was a great guy. So ever since then, we were involved with the Keystone Bigfoot Project, the PBS, and now I started doing the Sasquatch Experience with Sean. We've been following up on a lot of encounters that we get. We've been doing a lot of our own field research. And what we're doing is, what we have planned is, we're actually planning kind of a more, innovative group for this particular area. So we're kind of laying the groundwork now that, we're going to spend a lot of time in this one particular area. Just do as much scientific research as we could, in terms of, I have these, the bird recorders that record the bird songs. We have those programmed to record at night. So if we get a vocalization at night, we're able to pick that up. We have cellular game cameras, regular game cameras all over this place. We're doing a lot of town halls in this area, and we've been getting a lot of good feedback and good encounters. So it's something that we're going to be working more and more on.
How did you pick that particular spot where you're doing all this research?
So this is a research area that doesn't have a lot of reports. And there's a thing, there's what we were talking about is the reports that have come out of there. There's people that'll make their encounters on, say, Facebook or other social media or hunting forums, but there's not a lot of BFRO reports, lister reports for this area. The one thing is that first it's the one area, and I can tell you the name of the area. One of the areas that we investigated is called the Hammersley Fork Wild Area. The Hammersley Fork Wild Area is the largest roadless region in Pennsylvania. I think it's about 30,000 acres. There is not one road that it goes through that. I think it's at the center. I think it's somewhere about 8 or 9 miles from the closest road. And when we talk about a road, we're talking about a little fire road. So there's not a lot of people that go through there, but the reports that we get all seem to kind of line up where people are coming into that area, which will be during fishing season and hunting season, and which are the only times that we have, any sort of people that are coming through. Occasionally, you get somebody in the summertime, for the backpackers, but for the most part, our witnesses are coming forth or outdoorsmen. Mm-hmm. So we're in an area that doesn't. Again, it did not have a lot of reports, such as you would have with the Chestnut Ridge in southwestern PA, but we don't have the population up there either. And if I was looking at a map to say where could a large primate live in the state of Pennsylvania, I'd say it would be right there in north central PA. There's areas up through there that probably haven't had a person step on there since the logging days. So there's a lot of treacherous terrain up there. It's similar to the Smoky Mountains through that north central area, but you just don't have the crowd. You don't have a Pigeon Forge or a Gatlinburg out there, so you're not getting as many people through there. And again, the reports that we've gotten out of there that aren't particularly on the BFRO site, I've been putting together, compiling reports that from people have made mention, not just on the Bigfoot forums, but like on hunting forums, fishing forums, camping forums, and I'll search for anything that says anything about Bigfoot or any sort of suspicious activity while they're out in the woods, and I'll contact the person. I'll send them an email or I'll send them a direct message and just try to confirm, what they did, what they may have seen or what they may have experienced out there.
What's one of the more interesting accounts that you've heard from the area?
Well, there's a couple, but in this one here, the kid did put this out on a Facebook page, and he's public about it. But this is probably going to be the strangest one. And I'm going to probably put this in the best way to keep this a PG-oriented podcast here.
Sure.
Yes. Let's just say he was able to tell right off the bat that this was a male that he had an encounter with. This kid had actually he had a hunting camp, and he still goes up there, and it's in an area called the Quahana Wild Area, which is another expansive piece of wilderness in north central Pennsylvania. And he was out deer hunting, and he had seen at the top of the hollow it was more of like a light brown, almost a gray, hair-covered biped that was looking at him. And he said that, it just strolled away, but the way that it walked, it almost seemed like it was gliding. So that was his first experience there. And then the second experience was in another hollow when he was actually going out for bear hunting. And he said he got that odor that started hitting him. He started feeling the that something was watching him, and that's almost like an innate human response. If we have something that could be staring at us, we're going to know. And he said he turned around and he said no more than about 40 yards away. Again, it wasn't in the hollow itself, but he was definitely up on higher ground than him. He said that he saw this was like a dark brown hair-covered biped. Now, this was a year later. And he said that he actually saw his genitalia, and it appeared that, whatever it was excited. So that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Rather than make it, go into explicit detail. But he did say that it was that he can tell that, it was probably at some point sexually aroused. But it didn't make any sort of communication to him. It was just staring at him. And he said that, he went and, made a beeline right to the cabin. He said he didn't get the feeling that it was following him or it was, was going to make any further contact. He said he almost thinks that they kind of came up on each other, basically by mistake.
Caught with his pants down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's probably the strangest encounter that I got from that particular area. But there have been in the area, the specific area where Sean and I have been going, there was historically, there have been reports there. The first one was in 1977. There was another report in 1997 in this area, and they were very similar in the fact that the people were at their cabins. And again, these cabins that they have up there, they're not year-round cabins. They have they're on what they call state lease cabins. So they might have a cabin that's on the state forest, but first off, you can't live there. You have to you're restricted from spending so many days there. They also have usually they don't have electric or there's no water or well. They'll have like an outhouse. So they're very primitive. And these two families, 20 years apart, had items thrown at their cabins and had been basically chased out of the area when they had been up there. So again, these two reports were 20 years apart. The people didn't know each other, but their cabins. I pass our cabins when we go up to our area, and where Sean and I actually go camping is right smack dab in the middle between the two cabins, which is there's a road up there. We can't name it, but it's a straight line about 10 miles between the two cabins. Back in the 90s also, there was two police officers that went up to their camp. It was not on that road, but it was on a road that connects to the road that we're doing most of our research on. And they had been up there target hunting or target shooting. And next thing you know, they started hearing the vocalizations, and they couldn't tell what it was. And, because they never heard anything like that. And then as they were wrapping up, they started having stones being thrown at them. And they're like, all right, who the heck is throwing stones at us, out here. So I think when they came back the next week, they found prints in the area where their cabin was. But again, we're talking to more and more people, especially the sportsmen that are up there. And just recently, we had somebody contact us about a Class B encounter that they had last June, which was only about 7 or 8 miles away. from this particular area. So there's still activity in the area, but again, it's just not, we don't have a lot of witnesses up there.
I mean, it takes people to have Bigfoot sightings is the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
I think that's an element that whenever people are, getting involved in investigating this more deeply and they're reading the reports on the BFRO or wherever, and you start looking for these different patterns, you got to remember that the foundation of all those patterns you're seeing is people. Like you have
yes.
to have a person there to make the report.
Yes.
So it doesn't really matter that there aren't a lot of well-known reports coming out of the area. I mean, everything you're describing, I'm just sitting here going through the mental checklist in my head, and it sounds like, a researcher's paradise.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
The seasonal and minimal traffic, it's kind of a controlled area as close as you're going to get without having private property. And
yes.
Coming from the aspect of, some of the more popular theories about Bigfoot and their behavior and everything, this would be a prime area for them. I mean, they can be left alone, and at the same time, they do have people to observe and mess with and maybe
yes.
pick up a few trinkets here and there. But wow, man, it sounds like a great place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not that far from, especially where Sean lives. It's only about an hour and a half a drive from his house. So for me, it's a little longer, but I have a camp up there as well. So we try to get as much time as we could, going up there. Now I'll be up there next week and try to get some time in the woods. But even when it comes to the people with the sightings, one thing that Sean and I are trying to do is we know that there can't always be people up there, so we're relying on some of this technology that's coming out to hopefully help us. In particular, like I said, the recorders that we have, the audio recorders, I think that's really something that would help us pinpoint in certain areas. If we know that we're getting a vocalization on, say, in June at 3:00 in the morning, well, guess what? Next June, we're going to try to be out there at 3:00 in the morning, because everything's about patterns. So hopefully that will then, from the technology, extend it to a person having an experience and being able to witness something.
I thought of a question while you were talking about one of those particular stories that I wanted to ask you. That feeling of being watched that the kid experienced, and it's something that, as you know, it comes up in reports often.
Yes,
a change in the atmosphere. Do you feel that as a police officer?
We do get that sometimes, and I always say it's a physiological response. And our eyes may not be able to sense something, but we know, whether it's coming from a certain smell. Maybe it's a smell that we can't consciously smell ourselves, right. But it goes in subconsciously. It goes in, or just maybe with our hearing, maybe with something like. I know plenty of times where I've been out somewhere and I'll get that feeling like, with the hair going on the back of my neck, and I'll turn around and there's somebody that has a felony warrant that, that might be behind me trying to ditch, ditch the location, or maybe it's somebody that's trying to do an ambush. We've had that a couple of times where, and we're not in a major city, but we do have a lot of crime. And I can tell you the one time I was actually in with my partner in a house where the girl said, "Hey, you know what? There's somebody in here. I kept hearing noises." And what happened was she had a protection from abuse order against her boyfriend. And we checked the house out, but we just had that creepy feeling like, hey, we're not alone in here. And my partner went over and he was like, hey, there's one one place we didn't check. And when we went to go check, the guy was there. So we do, like I said, it could be just something subconscious that, that makes our body react. I'm not so much into the ESP part of it. But again, it could be, that guy's fear or that guy's anger or that guy, somehow we're able to detect it subconsciously.
Yeah. I was just curious because whenever it comes to the subject of Bigfoot, people tell stories all the time, and you've ran across people that aren't always truthful.
Yes.
And it's also a situation where it is very easy to let your thoughts run away with you whenever you get spooked. And so
sure.
The aspect of that feeling, I'm a firm believer in that gut feeling, that instinct, whatever it is, should be listened to whenever you're out in the field with Bigfoot. It doesn't
absolutely
necessarily mean that it's a Bigfoot in the area, but I think there's something to it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Over the weekend at the festival, I was talking to Jenny and Jamie King, and they are just fascinating people, and we love them to death. And but we were talking about that, and because they're more into a little bit more of the supernatural and such, and they have great explanations for it though, and so I do enjoy listening to them. I do enjoy talking to them, but we both agreed that there's places out there that out in the woods where there's places that whether it's the minerals in the ground or something just emits a positive energy to the person going through there. But then there's areas out in the woods that are the exact opposite, that give you that kind of dread and fear of going in. And there might be a good reason for it, or it may just be it's just the energy. I don't know. I do think it's kind of funny though, because I did say, well, there are a few areas where I get that way, and maybe it's like the top of the hollow where there's where it's a lot of rock, and you don't have the ferns growing, you don't have the trees growing. They might be on the outside, and you do get that. Sometimes you do get that sense of dread, and you may run into a rattlesnake den up there. A funny story. I had that happen to me where I do a lot of fishing in the backcountry, and I was actually in an area just like that where it was nothing but rocks that came down, and I'm fishing just this little tiny stream for native brook trout, and the hair started going up on the back of my neck, and I felt something was off. And I'm looking, and initially I'm looking straight ahead and to the sides. I didn't mean to look up yet. Well, here I go and look up, and what do I see? Probably about 30 yards away from me, I see this gigantic head. Well, the head had, the big tufted ears and the big whiskers. Here was a bobcat that had been sitting there watching me fish. And I had no clue. I was not looking up, but I had that sense that something was staring at me. And like I said, it took me a few minutes before I looked up, and here was the bobcat. Sitting at the edge of the ravine, sitting there watching me fish. Wow. So there is definitely something there. I don't think the bobcat was going to hurt me, but I was in an area where, again, not a lot of people go to in the first place. So I probably said, what's this guy doing, in the middle of the creek, waving a stick around. So,
yeah.
I
mean, I think it's just, leftover instincts that we're still a little bit tapped into. And I think the more you spend out in those wilderness areas, going back to the roots of mankind, the more in tune you are with those feelings. But
Yes.
it's just something that's really fascinating to me. All those aspects. I'm definitely the type of person, even though I've had experiences in my life that people would, definitely consider paranormal. Whenever it came to Bigfoot stuff and just things in general, I'm one of those people who I want to be able to observe it, measure it, record it.
Yes.
I don't, I like to talk about theory and speculation and everything and what could and couldn't be possible. But at the end of the day, I need something solid. And
yes,
Bigfoot doesn't offer much of that.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And there's a couple different theories as to why. And one theory that I kind of lean towards is there may not be a lot of them around. And, there may only be, a small, just a large enough population for them to keep the gene pool somewhat clean, but there just may not be a lot. And one analogy I try to give to people is think of how big the wilderness areas are, like especially, I'll say the north central PA part. Now, you go down to Philadelphia, take everyone out of the city of Philadelphia, and put 5 people in random buildings in Philadelphia. How hard is it going to be to find those people?
Oh, you could never find them.
Yes. So if you have maybe, like I said, with North Central PA or the Allegheny National Forest, which is another, and it's just right to the west of our area, and where I've had some experiences. It's such a large area, but if you only have a handful of these creatures out there, it's the odds are so set against us even having any sort of encounter with them.
Right.
If they truly do want to stay away from us. The other analogy I use too is in Pennsylvania, our coyote population has exploded over the last 20 years. And I always tell people, how often do you see coyotes? They live in the woods, and they come down to they come into like the outskirts of town, the farms and stuff to eat. But how many times have you seen a coyote? You know that they're there. You know that there's a very big population, but we just don't see them all the time. In fact, it's very rare to see a coyote here in Pennsylvania. And the reason being is that they're as intelligent as our dogs. And they have that intelligence. And next, they don't want to be, around humans. They want to go and eat the rabbits and the squirrels and everything else. They don't want to be around us. There might be a few that, are kind of messed up and they do want to go near humans or such. But for the most part, I can go out, especially in the wintertime, do a coyote call and have, I don't know, like at least 15 or 20 coyotes in just that short area respond back to me. But we don't see them, unless we're actually, unless I'm actually hunting for them and drawing them in. The average person isn't going to see a coyote.
Right.
Again, I try to use that analogy also with Bigfoot, that if there is a population here, first off, there may not be a lot, and then secondly, if they're smarter than a coyote, they really don't want to be around us, and they probably just want to go eat and do whatever else they want to do, but they don't want to come into into the towns or into the cities and go. They got enough food out in the mountains, so
taking that into consideration, that sort of obstacle, talking about the technology that you and Sean are using in this area.
Yes.
What do you personally look for to say, hey, I think we should put a camera here or in a recorder here? Are there certain things, or do you just kind of go into it blind?
No, I mean, you could say we kind of go into it blind, but I'm a big geography nerd. So I look for a couple different things. One is I look for places where there's food. Secondly, I look for places where the creature could traverse without being seen. And then the last thing I'm looking for is any additional features that are less than accessible to a normal person, where the creature could rest. So when I'm for example, behind my house, we have a mountain. It's called the Broad Mountain because it doesn't have a peak on it. It's almost like a long running plateau. What I would do up there is, again, I would look for places where, and one other thing too, I try to look at too, is for water source. Most of the time, you're not going to find them, find a lot of evidence, completely out in the desert. Although I have heard that, but you do need food, you need water, and you need shelter. So I try to look at things like that. So I'll look for specific areas where there might be multiple hollows, there might be ravines, but at the same point, we have I'll look for places where there is access to food, where something would be able to travel, pretty much through the cover of the woods. There is an area up there where I thought, I was thinking, oh my God, this is the best spot right here. There's a cliff that drops off about 80 feet. There's a couple little terraces down as it goes into the valley. There's a couple rock outcroppings. I'm like, oh, this is the perfect spot. I didn't get anything from it, but then we're hearing about 10 miles to the west of us that there was activity over there, and that has similar attributes. But we were just, we were kind of shotgunning to those areas that appeared that they would provide that habitat for a large creature like that.
You sent me a video of an experience you had.
Yes.
Was that in this area or a different area?
This was a slightly different area. It's just off to the west in the Allegheny National Forest. And there I actually had two experiences out there. They were both within a month of each other. That were pretty exciting experiences.
Yeah. Do you mind walking us through it for people that haven't heard about it?
Yes, absolutely. So I believe it was the end of September. I ended up doing an expedition up there with a bunch of friends of mine. And they had an area where they were getting pretty consistent activity in the Allegheny National Forest. And they said, hey, listen, we're going to go out here. We're going to get a bunch of, a good group of people. We're going to be spread out. We're going to see what we can get. So when we first go out there, they have what's called dispersed campsites. And these are basically campsites. Anyone could go up to them. They have fire pits, places where you can set up a camper or a tent. You can only be there for like a week, though, and then you have to move sites. But we had set up people at this particular camp. And then throughout the area, there was a few gas wells, natural gas wells. So with the natural gas industry, they put up these wells. They put in little trails to go up to the wells, and going through, you wouldn't even know they were there. But we had the main group stay at the dispersed site, and then myself, Gwen Purcell, my very good friend, and another investigator, we went next to one of these gas wells where there was a little trail that was coming up, and we were just to the east of, probably about, I'd say about a third of a mile from where the dispersed campsite was, and to the east. So we're sitting there, and we didn't have that much activity going on, and But myself and Gwen both had thermals, and we're just kind of going through. Every so often we'd see a deer coming through. But around, I guess it was around 2 o'clock in the morning, the people at the dispersed site, they had a big bonfire going. And I'm going to say it was mostly the older people that didn't want to go hiking at night. We're staying down there. Well, around that time, they heard something coming through the brush. And as it got close to the bonfire, they said that they heard a growl. So they radioed us and said, hey, listen, something came through and we heard a growl. No more than probably a minute after that, we heard 2 wood knocks. And this was between the dispersed site and us. So it was something obviously between the 2 places. And at that point, we just, me and Gwen are just like, all right, there's something going on. Well, we put our thermals on and we heard something coming through. And then on the other side of the trail, unfortunately with the trail, there was a lot of vegetation. So it was September. So we didn't have, the bare trees at that time, but we had a heat signature going behind those brushes, behind that brush. And whatever it was pretty big. So as it got through, and we, like I said, it was probably no more than 20 yards from us. And then it probably, what we're thinking, it went off further to the east of us. I went around to the side where I thought I could try to get a little more visibility. And we had seen something peeking out from a tree, and then at that point, unfortunately, we don't have the best flares. We had the cell phone flares. It just kind of died out. I went over to that area where we saw that just a few minutes later, and I had Gwen checking, standing at the road. And I said, okay, this is, I think, the tree where I was at, where I saw that head peak. I'm 6'4", and whatever it was at least another 10 inches taller than I was.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was our first experience. So then at the A&F. So then a month later, we decided that we're going to all meet up again, and we're gonna check the area out. So I had the rest of the crew were kind of going back to that same spot, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go check out a couple areas that might be good for us going out here. We have a husband and wife that live right outside the A&F, and they're out almost 6 nights a week. Going to doing the back roads, looking for any sort of evidence. So they're generally keyed in, but this particular area where I went wasn't an area that they spent a lot of time in. So I go up there and I marked off a couple spots where we can, possibly do some call blasting from, where we can, have a dispersed site. And then looking at the map, the way I normally look at things, I found this stream that was coming down from the mountain. I found a dispersed site with a gas well, and I also found that there was some kind of irregular terrain that was further away from the road. So I said, you know what, this looks like a good spot. So I'm gonna go check it out. So I go up there, and this is Saturday afternoon around 4 o'clock. I hike up the gas well, and about maybe about 150 yards from where I parked. I'm sitting there looking at, and the pathway itself was pretty muddy. Everything else was rocky, but the path going up to the gas well was kind of slick. So as I'm going up there, I'm looking at the ground, looking for deer tracks, bear tracks, and such. And I see this track that's going across the path. And I look at it a little more, and I'm like, oh my God, there's toes in here. So then I take out, the only thing I had with me, and I got to say this, I normally try to be prepared when I go out. I was not prepared at all this time. This was just more or less a scouting trip. So of course I used $20 bills because that's what I had in my pocket to try to size up the print. And because you can take a $20 bill or any sort of bill and know that it's 5 and 1/2. I don't know what the exact but say like 5 inches long, and you could use that to scale for the photo. So I took pictures of it and I said, all right, I'm going to mark this, and I'm going to go see if I can get some plaster. Well, I tried getting a hold of everyone, and there's no cell service out there, so I couldn't get a hold of anyone. By the time I got down off the mountain, it was on a Saturday, so it was probably around 6 o'clock, 5 or 6 o'clock, and by that time everything was closed. Because there's not a lot of the closest Walmart's like an hour away. So I'm like, oh man, you know what? Does anyone have plaster? No one had plaster. All right. The next morning, I'm going to go up there. And before I do that, I'm going to run into the town. There's a hardware store there, get some plaster, go up there and cast it. So the next morning, overnight it rained. And unfortunately, it probably degraded the track a little bit. So I wasn't happy about that. But the next morning I woke up. It was a beautiful day. And I ended up going into the town, the closest town, getting my plaster, getting a bucket, everything else. So I drive up to this to the spot, and it's about a 5-mile drive in from the paved road. And when I went up there was not one car that I passed. There was nobody that had spent the night up there. There was no one there that it was doing any exploring or hiking. There was just no one there. So I park in the dispersed camp spot there and hike up, get the plaster all set. And again, the track degraded a little bit from the rain, but I figured, well, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to cast it. So I cast it, and I head back downhill, and I head down to my truck. Now, I don't have cell service up there. So I'm just looking, and again, I'm a map nerd, so I'm looking over the maps and everything. Well, I'm looking over the bed of my truck, and something caught my eye. About 75 to 100 yards away, I see this tree. It's a smaller tree, but I see this tree shaking, violently shaking. And the way I described it is back in the 80s and the 90s, we had those, if you go to the game shows, they had those booths that the money would fly in and you try to grab all the money.
Right.
It was, the leaves were coming down like that off this tree. So I'm sitting there and I don't see a squirrel. I don't see a deer. I don't see anything, but I see this tree, just this lone tree shaking. So by the time, and you know what, I'm going to tell you, I was upset afterwards because I had my phone with me and I'm like, you know what, I should have recorded that. But you don't think about that. You're just so much in awe of watching this.
Yeah.
So I finally got the phone up, and then I started talking to whatever was out there. And I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to harm you at all. I'm just here to document the print that one of you left up there. It was funny because I said, if you want to come up and I could get your picture, that would be great.
I mean, why not?
But I'm not here to hurt you. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a police officer, but it's 50-50 on whether I carry or not. And I didn't feel like carrying. Like I didn't carry when I was up in the A&F because there's nothing there that, other than people that, would really put that fear in me. And so I didn't even have a knife with me, so I had nothing. I only had the stick for my plaster bucket if something came after me. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not going to harm you, and I'm doing that whole de-escalation. Well, then it stopped. So I sat there, and what I did was I picked up the phone and started doing my video, only because of the fact that I felt that if I kept talking, that, it kind of helped with the little bit of the fear, a little bit of the anxiety. So I just kept that talking going, even with the recording, because it was dead quiet out there. And this is, again, October, and there's migratory birds, there's animals, there's all sorts of stuff that should be in those woods. It was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. So I'm just sitting there, and like I said, the talking was just basically to keep me from getting a little too nervous.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, you know what? I got to go get this cast. So I ran up, got the cast, came back, went down to the truck. So I said, all right, you know what? Now I'm going to go over to where this area was and see if there's. I just wanted to kind of put my mind at ease. If there was a deer down there, this is during what they call the rut. You would see the buck rub. You would see where the antlers would be, or the markings. So I said, I want to go and see this tree. So I got in the truck, drove down going back the same way, where I was. Well, the first thing I noticed is there's about a 7-foot drainage ditch that was right adjacent to the tree. And what it was it was probably done back in like the 1930s or 40s for the Civilian Conservation Corps. It was basically like an anti-erosion ditch. And it was a man-made probably, but this went down the mountain. And it was literally right next to this tree. So unfortunately, down at the bottom of the where this ravine, little ravine ditch was, it's all rocks. So there's no soft material for me to try to get any sort of evidence. But I walked down there, and I'll tell you what, I could grab the tree, and again, I'm 6'4". I could grab the tree, but I couldn't shake it the way that thing was being shook. And I'm going to tell you, man, I'm a big guy, I'm pretty strong. So for me not to shake that thing that violently, something much stronger than me had to have been able to move that. So then, I did notice when I looked up the mountain, I saw some areas that could be utilized as a bear den or something else. Something else may have been in that particular area. But at that point, then I said, all right, this really has me intrigued with this. And it doesn't seem like I didn't have a sighting, but the fact that there was a print that was taken that was relatively fresh, along with behavior that could be attributed to a primate with the tree shaking, and the fact that the woods went silent, it just really had me kind of really heavily thinking about what happened that day.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely a unique experience that I've had. But again, going back to the whole mapping thing, what did we have? We had, we had food sources because there was the gas lines that weren't that far. We had water. We had, basically a remote area that not a lot of people had gone to. And there was places, again, where we had some weird geography, to the north of me where, something could go up there and sleep and pretty much spend the whole summer. And no one's gonna walk in on them. So it was pretty interesting.
Do you think the gas wells are an attractant for them of some kind?
You know what? I don't think that they hurt. The one particular thing with the gas wells is what they do for whether it's for the gas well itself or for the pipelines is they're, clearing out a line, with, so they're clearing out the trees. But we're only talking about like, maybe just a stretch that's, anywhere from, it could be as narrow as, 3-4 yards to, maybe 10 yards across. So you have all that area that that's taken out, and then you have usually like ryegrass or other vegetables and vegetation that grows there. That's food for deer.
Right.
That's food for. We have elk in Pennsylvania. We also have, just so many other the birds, other mammals that would go there. And what we actually find is with some of these, it's kind of a controversial view, but with some of these, gas lines and everything, they're actually great for hunting. As a hunter, oh my God, it draws animals in.
Well, it's like everybody in the Bigfoot world always talks about, the electric lineways, and it's the same type situation. You also hear a lot of stuff about railroad tracks. And again, it's areas cleared out through a forested area where now sunlight can penetrate and different types of vegetation grows, and that attracts prey animals. And I have found, for whatever it's worth, that there seems to be a lot of Bigfoot reports in areas where you find those changes in ecosystems, where multiple ecosystems kind of converge. They call them ecoregions, where you have an abundance of a different types of, vegetation and animals and everything else. And it's this similarity, same thing hunters look for, for a reason.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think, and years ago, before we were even here, we had the natives didn't have a fire service. They, there was a fire, they moved out of the way. But what happened was you had all these forest fires, and the forest would naturally regenerate. And one of the healthiest ecosystems is a regrowing forest from the years of 10 years to 20 years, because of what's actually growing through there. And that's where you're going to find a lot of deer. That's where you're going to find a lot of ruffed grouse, turkey. And again, this is if we take Bigfoot out of the equation, and we're looking at other predators, this is where you're going to find your coyotes. This is where you're going to find your bears. This is where you're going to find your bobcats going. Mountain lions as well. So your predators are gonna follow your prey animals.
Now, this spot you're talking about, do I remember correctly that you mentioned this was somewhat near the Jacobs photo location?
It was. Yes. So the Jacobs photo, this was about 15 miles north, almost due north of where the Jacobs photo location was. And it's funny because we actually did a nighttime investigation there, and I got to see my old friend there because I picked up something on the thermal with a gigantic head. And it came out from under the from the brush, and here there was a bobcat that was kind of stumbling through. We were just outside the Jacobs area where there was some actually regenerating woods there. So, but yeah, I did some nighttime investigations there. I talked to some people in that area, and we haven't had as many people saying that they saw something, but we've had a lot of people say that they've heard things in that particular area.
What's your take on the Jacobs photos?
I mean, I'm going to tell you, it looks like a mangy bear to me. But I don't know, I'm still trying to keep an open mind unless I actually saw there's two pictures, I believe, out of that group. And, the one thing that kind of throws a curveball at me with it is we had, and this is something that Sean investigated, there was a state employee, that's probably the best way to put it, from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that had seen what he believed to be a chimpanzee. And it was in Clearfield County, which wasn't that far from where that particular area of the ANF is. He said that this creature, it looked like a chimpanzee until it got up on two legs and ran away. It was actually dumpster diving in one of the state parks. And this was off season, so there wasn't a lot of people there. So I don't know. Like I said, I really, in my opinion, I think it's a mange bear, but I think having someone tell me that experience that happened shortly before, it was the same year that the Jacobs photo was taken, and just a few months before that. So I don't know. Like I said, I can't really conclude one way or the other on that.
Yeah, it's a hard one because
it is.
In fairness, there are other photos taken from that camera that show bears.
Yes. Yes.
Similar in size.
Yes.
But if you remove the bears from the equation, it kind of looks like a chimpanzee.
It does. It does, which is what this person had seen. Like I said, just a few months before, and 40 miles to the west or to the east of there. So we're not talking about something that happened halfway across the state.
Right.
We're talking about something that within a couple months, and with the amount of woods and forest in that area, it could be the same creature. And that's actually what this person had said after the Jacobs photo was released, that he believed that was exactly what he saw. So like I said, it's a tough one. I think this new photo that came out from North Carolina, there's a new photo that just came out that looks to be a bear.
Yeah.
But the Jacobs photo just has some proportions to it that are just off. And, but neither here nor there, there's been some historical activity in that area. So, if we can get another game cam photo, that would be fantastic.
I've talked to a lot of people. You've talked to a lot of people. You hear a lot of stories, and sometimes the stories do have certain elements to them, supernatural, woo, paranormal, whatever label you want to call it. Where is your limit? Everybody has kind of a personal line that they're willing to keep an open mind and believe up to a certain point as at least a possibility. Where's your limit at where it's like, once we reach there, it's just, no, this person's lying. There's no way that happened.
Yeah. It's kind of, it depends on the witness, but, I'll tell you, I'm not into the portal thing. I'm not into, that they change shapes or turn into, orbs. I think what we're looking at is a flesh and blood creature. Is there some things about the creature that, I wouldn't say would be supernatural, but would be, something that we're not completely familiar with. I guess as far as I can go is people talked about the fur that some people have described that, the fur could be particularly at maybe the tips or closer to the root would be more of a clear that so that it blends in more naturally with the environment, which I could see that, and it might give it that shimmering look. But as for portals or anything like that, I'm here to say it's a flesh and blood creature. Years ago, I ran with a guy who was a paranormal researcher, who was also into Bigfoot, and I kind of brought up something, and I said, so we're looking at the ghost of a Civil War person. We're looking at the ghost of a Revolutionary War hero. I said, where's the ghost for the Neanderthals at? Where are the ghosts for the Cro-Magnon man? And
yeah.
he was like, I think that's right. But no, I mean, it could be, I don't know, we just don't know yet. But, and I just kind of said that off the cuff, and the guy's like, no, I actually believe that then. But to me, like I said, I think it's a flesh and blood creature. And so I came up with this other kind of theory about Bigfoot and UFOs. And I said, okay, people talk about being abducted by UFOs. It's a phenomena. People talk about, how, and it's documented. People throughout over the world have talked about this. I said, well, what if the Bigfoot population is only, a micro fraction of the human population, but they're just as important. So maybe the UFOs are abducting the Bigfoots as well. And that's why we see Bigfoots and UFOs together. Not that they really want to be, not that the Bigfoots maybe want to be with the UFOs, but maybe they're studying them as well, but I don't know. That's about as far as I would take it.
I mean, I grew up with pictures of UFOs, pulling cows up in the tractor beams. So,
yes.
I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I think any theory is as good as the next, until we start to get some solid answers.
Absolutely. And like I said, with Bigfoot, if they're as intelligent as people say, maybe they are something that the aliens are interested in, and that would probably explain, and then maybe they're just to the point where they just don't care about them, as much as we do. It's not like, they could be sitting there saying, hey, look at that thing in the sky, and I don't know, it is an interesting topic.
Going back to your police training, what's some advice that you would give Bigfoot investigators for when they're interviewing a witness? Maybe just to pull out information and determine if they're telling the truth or not.
What I would say is there's a lot of good YouTube videos on interviewing people. I've been through a lot of the face-to-face classes with them, but the biggest thing is, going through and reading about interview and interrogation, and looking at statement analysis, whether it's verbal or written. So I don't want to go too deep into it. I'd rather let the viewer or the listener go through and explore on their own. But because there's so much with it, and there's also some little tricks and stuff that we kind of keep under our cuff, but and it's not so much tricks, but they're things that we look for when people are being interviewed. One of the biggest things is when people will skip certain aspects of an encounter. They could describe what they saw down to a T, even saying it had crow's feet around its eyes and a white crest on its chest. But if they can't tell you, how long it took them to go from, where they were sighting down to the car, or what they did afterwards, then at that point you're starting to think, okay, well, especially for a fresh encounter, somebody would remember certain aspects. They may forget certain aspects, but they're not going to skip through certain aspects. So we always look at that. I always look to it historic, I'll have the person, what I'll do is I'll have the person, talk to me about just some regular details. And then at that point, I'm establishing a baseline with them for, just for how they respond to questions. And then that way, when we go into the harder questions, now I know where that baseline is. And are they deviating from it, or are they, pretty consistent with how their baseline was?
What about details that they add? This is something that in the past I always have used as a way of, just for my own personal opinion, that this person might be telling the truth. Whenever there's certain details that, to me, if I were making up the story, there's no reason to add that detail. For instance, the young man that you referred to earlier, is somebody going to make up a story and say, oh, by the way, it had an erection?
Yes. And I'll tell you what, with some of with people leaving out details or adding details at the end, there are certain details that, especially with this kid here, like when he was talking about this, when we originally, talked to him one-on-one, he was able to keep, because he's like, not only did I see a Bigfoot, but I saw a Bigfoot with an erection,
Yeah. How do you even say that to somebody?
Yeah. So, which kind of caught us off guard, but there was a lot of indicators that he gave us that, he was being honest with us. But I know, I'll give you an example, and this is actually something that happened to me. I had a traumatic on-the-job incident that occurred, and when I was going through talking to our critical distress team about it, I'm going through everything that happened, and then I had a follow-up with them, and I said, oh, I also remembered something else. And, I went through, and it was actually a pretty important part of the whole, incident. But it was just something that I didn't recall, when I was doing the initial speak with our de-stress team. It was something that I just didn't really, think about, for whatever reason, it wasn't in my mind. But then the second time when I was talking about it, I brought it up. With that particular incident, I know for me, like I said, that was something that I didn't initially. I wrote it in my report, but when I went to go talk to our de-stress team, it was something that I didn't bring up. And like I said, it was actually a pretty big part of it. So, like I said, I won't knock somebody for not remembering a detail like that, because again, and I'll just go back to this is, unless you're a Bigfoot researcher, or unless you're, I don't know, I've heard about some really, I can't say bad sightings, but I'll go into that in a minute. But for the most part, we're getting encounters, or we're getting visual sightings from people maybe out in the woods, not even knowing that Bigfoot exists.
Right.
And then they see something that's 7 feet tall with the cone head that, that looks like it could play NFL, offensive line, and they're going to freak the heck out. And to them, it's going to be a traumatic experience. Now, I was going to say there's bad encounters. When I say bad encounters, I had a very good friend of mine, and he was like, he told me afterwards, he was like, I think I saw a Bigfoot. And I'm like, really? And he was like, he was like, I didn't even know. It didn't even dawn on me. He was like, he's out in the middle of nowhere, completely off trail. And he was like, it didn't really dawn on me. I just saw a guy, he was walking down at the bottom of the mountain dressed in all black in the middle of the summer. And I'm like, how far was he? He was like, oh, he was about 300 yards away. And I'm like, did you look at it? He was like, I was walking away. He was like, no, wait, who's walking around in all black in 90-degree heat, off trail? And I'm like, I don't know, so, yeah. And when I say bad Bigfoot encounter, that's, the ones that are like, happenstance, you don't realize until afterwards, like, holy cow, that might have been a Bigfoot. But again, for a lot of the people that are going out, like a lot of the witnesses I always spoke with, this kid, he saw the one the year before, but he didn't expect to see another one a year later. And he was not into Bigfoot at the time. Like he kept the first one under, basically under wraps because he didn't want to get ridiculed. And they said, well, the second one, he let people know, hey, I saw something, but he confided us that, hey, what I saw was, was this. But again, like I said, and that's the other thing too, is how many people up in our research area, hunters, fishermen, I'll tell you another story from up there. And this was actually close to the area where the kids saw the two creatures previously. And this is going back in 2015. I was doing research up in the area, and I was talking to a guy that was driving around. And this was in early spring. So it was before trout season, and it was before turkey season, before anyone would come up there. And the guy mentioned that he saw somebody in a ghillie suit about 3/4 of the way up the mountain crossing the thing. And he said, who's out here turkey hunting? He was like, are they doing early season for, sometimes they do early season for kids and stuff. I'm like, no, that doesn't start for like another 3 weeks. He was like, well, the guy's running around up here on the power lines about 3/4 of the way up. I went up there and I saw where this guy had his sighting, but to him, he didn't see a Bigfoot. He just saw a guy in a ghillie suit.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you right now, that was straight uphill. Like I would not be able to climb that. Even if I got up to the top and went to the 3/4 mark, it would take me all day to climb back up to the top, because this mountain was just straight uphill.
And then in a ghillie suit.
In a ghillie suit. So, like I said, this guy may have seen something, but in his mind, all he saw was a guy in a ghillie suit.
Well, I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does, especially up in that area.
I mean, if you don't think that Bigfoot exists, if it's not something that's on your mind and you're out there and you see something or hear something, you're going to put the puzzle piece that pops in your head first that fits, like, oh, it had to have been a bear or a person or somebody wearing a black hoodie and, sweatpants. Bigfoot's not on the radar.
It's not. It's not. And even with the guy I was telling you about that saw, the person in black, he also researches Bigfoot. So, and like I said, he was so kind of pissed off at himself after the fact, because he was like, oh my God. He was like, I think I just saw one. He was like, I didn't even, he was like, he was just down there walking. So, I mean, and like I said, that's always a possibility too. And again, I think, I've been hearing more and more about, Bigfoot's going on all fours, and I'm going to tell you, you get something brownish, darker colored running on all fours. Somebody up here is going to think it's a bear, and we have plenty of bears around here. And could it be a misidentification? It could be. But once if that we had an encounter that was reported to us where the guy was driving down the road and he thought he saw a bear, on the side of the road, climbing up, the embankment. And he said, as he was driving, oh, there's a bear. until the bear got up on 2 feet, 2 very large legs, and made its way up into the woods from the embankment with very little effort. So he said at that point, he said, it's not like, he told me, he said it wasn't like it transformed. He was like, but as you're driving and you're coming up on this, you think it's a bear. And then he said it just happened to stand up and took, 2 steps into the woods. Like it was, he said it was as effortless as what we would walk flat. This climbed up, a steep embankment like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And, so like another encounter that we had, this is going back in the early 90s, but the person came forward to report it. He said that he was canoeing, and they set up camp in a rural area here, not that far from where I live. And they thought they saw a tree, like a big tree trunk. It was where a smaller creek was flowing into the river. And he said, yeah, they don't really think anything of it until they saw this tree trunk stand up and just go off into the woods. It never looked back at them. But, he said, as it turned, again, with this guy here, one common thing I get is, Bigfoot are bulked up,
Yeah.
So, because he said it was pretty wide, but as it stood up, he was like, that thing looked like Brock Lesnar, So, we get some interesting encounters. And again, one thing that Sean and I are trying to do, and along with a few others, is trying to put all this data together and try to find patterns. And, and maybe with us putting these patterns and data together, maybe that'll put us into the right place at the right time.
One last question before I finally let you go, man. Have you seen anything else? Have you seen a UFO? Did you have any paranormal experiences whenever you were running around with that group? Anything else to report?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, UFOs, nothing. It was actually one time I was doing research up there, and I'm like, holy cow, what the hell am I seeing? I'm sorry, what the heck am I seeing? And here I ended up downloading later on that satellite lookup. It was all the Starlinks going through.
Yeah.
So
that one's gotten quite a few people.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that I do know that there's stuff, that our government, I'm not going to say that our government has the Area 51 aliens, but I know that there's top secret, above top secret stuff either through, they're kind of, I think they're kind of doing away with Boeing Skunk Works, but a lot of stuff's coming from RAND Corporation that is pretty hardcore, pretty cool stuff once it comes out. But really that's as far as the UFO UAP thing. But as for ghosts, I'll tell you, I'll leave you with this one. Is I was working, and this is the whole story that started, the whole paranormal thing with us with this building. So the building itself in town where I worked, where I still work actually, was an old high school. And what we found out was that we did all the research on it. It was actually the school from when the town was first, even before the town was officially named. Back in the 1850s. It was basically a big wooden structure that stood on top of this hill at basically in the center of town. 1907, they tore it down and they built this gigantic, concrete and marble building. State of the art at the time, just this wonderful building, and they had it as at that point in time it was the school, so all grades went there. Eventually, it became the junior high and high school, and then later on, it was just they built a new high school, and that was the junior high school. They stopped using it back in, I think it was the late 90s, like 98, 99 is when they last had classes there. So I'm working there as a police officer. I'm working night shift, and the school had basically fallen into disrepair at the time, but they were getting ready to get the funds to fix everything up and do what they have to do to it. But it was still the old school. And the one thing is that they had a indoor swimming pool down there. Well, the indoor swimming pool, that was really, really attractive to skateboarders. So the skateboarders would break in at night and go down there and do their stuff. And, we'd get called. We'd tell them, hey, you got to get out of here. So one night shift, about 2 o'clock in the morning, we get an alarm call. So there's myself, my partner, and then we called an officer over from the neighboring township to clear the building. So we're going up. We didn't hear, there was no skateboarders there, because they would just be at the pool. But we decided, hey, we're going to clear the whole building. So we go up to the second floor, and the guy that was working the township, he gets on the radio. He was like, I got somebody over here. I got somebody over here. So we all go running. And what happened was there was a classroom that had a divider in the middle, but they had taken the divider down. So it was basically one gigantic room. He said, hey, the guy ran in here. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to take one door. You take the other door, and then we have the other officer who's going to stay out here in the hallway. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in, make entry, and we'll find this guy. And I asked him, I said, what did the guy look like? He was like, I don't know. He was dressed in all black. All right, makes sense. It's an attractive place for a burglar, too, because there's pipes and everything in there and stuff they could take. So we actually make entry. And when we made entry, I saw this figure, and the way I describe it is, remember people used to wear those like nylon suits, like the Green Man suit, where it covers their face. It was like that, but it was all black. And I saw this figure, and it was over by a desk. It ended up standing up, and I saw it. I'm like, there he is. That thing ran towards my the other guy and just basically went into the wall.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there like, what the hell did we just see? He was like, dude, I saw the same thing. So ever since then, I've had a couple other interesting experiences. We got them involved with the ghost hunting group with going in there then, and as it was getting cleaned up to raise money for the repairs and everything. And we had some interesting things happen. We'd hear footsteps. We had somebody whistling, like audibly, that you could hear. So we think that whatever was there wasn't particularly evil or bad or anything. Probably just didn't realize that we were going to be there or something. But this thing just went right into the wall and just disappeared. There was another time that we were at an old it was an old hotel, and the owners had it was actually the original owners. That family decided to buy the building back, and they wanted to turn it into a restaurant. And but the lady who owned it back in the day, she was she did seances and all sorts of stuff. She was into all sorts of occult and witchcraft there, and we were in there a couple of times. We kept seeing this guy. We called him Joe. And the one day, I think it was the first time that we were in there, It was me and another guy. We were the only guys there, and then the rest of the people were female. And they had the walls knocked down, and you could just see the studs coming down. And I saw a super thin guy wearing jeans with the suspenders with the red flannel, but I couldn't see his face. And I looked over. My buddy looked over, the girls looked over, and they're like, who's here? And whatever it was just disappeared. And people kept seeing this guy. The one time, one of the guys I was doing research in there was sitting with his laptop at the bar, and another researcher came in and said, who's the guy standing behind you? And he turned around and he was like, there was nobody here. And the way he described him was exactly like Joe, with the flannel shirt, with the suspenders, the jeans. And, so I do think that there's something there, with that. But I try, I'd rather, I'd rather go out in the woods where I'm not going to have something that attaches to me or anything that, that I won't, I mean, the most I could get attached is getting a tick or a leech while I'm going through the swamps. That's fine because I could see it and I could pull it off. But if I go into a place and the spirit attaches onto you, no, I don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather deal with being in the woods.
Yeah.
So
an old friend of mine once said that he didn't want to mess with nothing he couldn't punch in the face.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to put it.
Well, Matt, I have thoroughly enjoyed it, man. Fascinating stuff. What do you got coming up? Are you guys just going to focus on the research? Is conference season finally over?
Yeah, we are looking to do a town hall up in the southern Potter County area. So, but that's just we're really focusing on not as a festival, but for people to come in and share their experiences with us. So we're going to probably be doing that sometime in late September, and then. But as for anything else, for me, as soon as mid-August rolls around, I'm going to be spending the majority of my off time out in the woods. So and I'll be armed with my good camera, and we're going to try to get some good data to bring forward. So especially if we can get any DNA samples, we're looking at working with NC State with that, and the best way to get that is to be out there.
Yeah, and of course you can check out Matt on the Sasquatch Experience with Sean Forker and the boys. Got a whole crew of you guys over there. Let's see here: James, Vance, and Henry May, the Encyclopedia of the Bigfoot World.
Absolutely, yes.
Great group, very knowledgeable. Lots of experience, the Sasquatch Experience. And how can people reach you directly?
So I could be reached either through Facebook under Matt Mickey Arner, or through Cryptic Wilderness is it's a page that I've had. I still keep up with it, even though I don't post a whole lot with it. And we'll be announcing our new project through the Sasquatch Experience, hopefully within the next few months. And that's going to be... we're calling it the Allegheny Plateau Project.
Nice.
So keep an eye open for that.
And as always, if you've had your own encounter with Bigfoot or something else you can't explain that you'd like to share, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.